Good evening, everyone. This is Camille, Uplifter's learning designer, and thank you for joining me and my guest tonight. It may be that we have a little bit of a technical issue tonight, so that's why we're live on YouTube, potentially not yet on Facebook. But we will definitely go on and hear what our guest has to say tonight and disseminate then the episode on our different social media communities. So, just a little bit about Uplifters. Uplifters is a nonprofit organization empowering domestic workers with online education and peer support. What we do mainly is that we offer online courses on money management, personal growth, and mental well being for domestic workers. So it is actually extremely easy for you as a domestic worker to enroll. The only thing you need to do is to actually go on our page. I'm going to screen the link just below and click on send message on our Facebook page just to enroll. So tonight is the 32nd episode of our Uplift Your Night series, and we're delighted to be here with you tonight. The very first objective with this Uplift Your Night Facebook Live is actually to be together. Uplifters is first and foremost a community. The second objective is that as a community, we want to keep learning together and, above all, support each other. So this episode, so this is the 32nd of our Uplift Our Night series, will discuss the situation of migrant domestic workers and other ethnic minority communities with regard to HIV and AIDS. Currently, there is no definitive effective cure that can completely eradicate HIV virus. Yet, several adopted treatments have greatly expanded AIDS patients' life expectancy and quality of life. With this episode, we want to contribute to sexual health awareness and education to protect further the community. So we're very grateful to have Maria Tahir. Maria is prevention officer at AIDS Concern being a very close partner to Uplifters. And she will be sharing her knowledge with us about the difference between HIV and AIDS, the biggest myth surrounding HIV and AIDS, and also obviously we'll be discussing protection strategies. Very briefly regarding AIDS Concern, they want to see Hong Kong with zero new HIV infections, zero stigma. So we'll discuss a little bit what stigma is and how it can affect people living with HIV, and also zero AIDS deaths. Their mission is to lead social change by individuals, organizations, and society to achieve this 000 target, to stop the spread of HIV/AIDS and eliminate stigma for people living with HIV. MESH is a service under team under AIDS Concern that aims to achieve this by providing sexual health services for Indonesian, Filipino, migrant domestic workers community, and also the African community. So we're extremely grateful to AIDS Concern for their time and their expertise. And extremely happily, I will now welcome Maria to our episode. Welcome, Maria.
Hi everyone. Hope everyone's having a great evening. Thank you, Uplifters, for having me tonight. I'm very happy to be sharing my knowledge on HIV and AIDS tonight.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you for your time. And we really do want to know more. I know some of our team leaders. So team leaders are alumni of our courses who support domestic workers who are studying courses. So some of our team leaders attended one of the workshops that you provide. So we're very happy to be able to actually expand the reach and provide this knowledge for the broader community. So, Maria, I think the first question I'd like to ask you is if you could explain to us a little bit what is the difference between HIV and AIDS?
For sure. So this is something that's actually very commonly misunderstood in the community. A lot of the people assume HIV and AIDS are the same thing, but HIV does not equal to AIDS. In fact, they're actually very different. So if we break down the name of HIV and AIDS, we see that HIV is called human immunodeficiency virus, whereas AIDS is what's called acquired immunodeficiency syndrome. So it's basically a condition. AIDS is a condition. HIV is actually a virus. So if we look at it at how it starts to begin affecting our body, what affects our body is the virus, which is HIV, and when we're exposed to it, it starts to attack our immune system and kills our white blood cells, and makes our immune system very compromised. And when that happens, it becomes easier for our body to get infected with a lot of opportunistic infections. These are pathogens that take advantage of an opportunity that's not normally available, which is basically a weakened immune system. So these opportunistic infections, they include tuberculosis, pneumonia, fungal infections. They do occur in people that have healthy immune system, but they don't affect them because their immune system is able to fight it off. But because people that are infected with this virus, their immune system is compromised and weakened, so therefore the virus attacks their body very easily. And if the person does not get treated and diagnosed at the right time, then the virus advances to AIDS. So if we look at it as a whole picture, HIV plus one of these AIDS defining illnesses, which typically include tuberculosis, pneumonia, fungal infections, HIV plus these AIDS defining illnesses is then equal to AIDS. So a person living with HIV does not necessarily mean that they have AIDS. They're completely different.
Thank you, Maria. I mean, this is a huge difference, and we obviously understand that sometimes there may have some confusion, but at the same time, there are two different stages. And I think, lifting up the stigma also starts with having a good understanding of what we're talking about, right?
Yeah, definitely. A lot of the people, they tend to stigmatize because they believe it's the same thing, and because they've heard a lot of stuff about AIDS patients, so they perceive that HIV and AIDS are the same thing, and they start stigmatizing because of that.
Mm. Well, thank you. Thanks a lot for clarifying. I guess one topic that our audience tonight would be interested in hearing about is what is the general situation of migrant domestic workers with regard to HIV and AIDS?
Okay, that is unfortunately the HIV cases in Hong Kong among the ethnic minority community is rising. So, from a statistical standpoint, the latest data that we have from the government is last year of June, and what we see is that among the ethnic minorities in the past 3 years specifically, the cases have went from around 15.9% in 2017 to over 25% now in 2022,
Oh,
which is a
wow.
rapid increase in the past 3 years. And they've looked at the specific breakdown, and they're seeing that most of these new cases, about half of them, they're coming from Asian ethnicities. And within these Asian ethnicities, the majority of these cases, they're coming from Indonesian, Filipino, and Thai communities. So, and if we look at what the Indonesian and Filipino minorities in Hong Kong are doing, we find out that over 95% of these minorities are working as migrant domestic workers. So essentially, the breakdown leads us to understand that a huge proportion of these new cases are coming from migrant domestic workers from Indonesian and Filipino minorities. And therefore, our service team at AIDS Concern Mesh are specifically targeting and have been since 2017 to these migrant domestic workers. But recently, actually this year, we're expanding to the Thai and Vietnamese communities as well, because we are seeing cases from there as well. So this is something that we have just started to explore and see how we can reach that community as well, so we can kind of conquer this whole thing as a whole.
Thank you, Maria. Well, I really hope your project will succeed and you'll be able to reach out to more. And maybe you don't have the answer to this one, but I would be curious to know whether we have an idea of the reasons why there is such an increase and why it's the community is specifically affected.
Well, there are a couple of reasons actually. One of the reasons is actually we do know that migrant domestic workers have to travel back and forth, back to their home countries, and then they have to come back, and then they when the cases in Indonesia and the Philippines where they're coming from are much higher than in Hong Kong. And what happens sometimes is because they've been apart from their partners for a very long time, we see that their partner may be engaging in other extramarital affairs abroad. So when they do go back to their home countries, they get infected with HIV without even knowing that their partner was engaging in unprotected sex and had been transmitted with HIV abroad. And some of the cases are actually we find that they are contracted in Hong Kong. So, migrant domestic workers, one of the most common route of transmission that we see is unprotected sexual intercourse. So, if migrant domestic workers are engaging in unprotected sexual intercourse, that's one of the most common ways of being transmitted with HIV. Within the Indonesian community, we see that condom use is actually a very it's a taboo topic, and we see that condom use is not prevalent at all, and there are multiple reasons as to why that is. Sometimes their husbands or their male partners are not wanting to use them, so then they end up at not they don't feel like they have enough power to negotiate condom use, and that leads them to engage in unprotected sexual intercourse, sometimes without even their own will, and that potentially leads to HIV and puts them at risk.
Thank you, Maria. There are, I mean, like the good news in this poor situation is that there are very specific reasons, like very concrete ones. So I guess it also gives, a good hopes in terms of knowing what to target when it comes to prevention. So yeah, it's indeed a very specific situation for the community of migrant domestic workers. You touched on it a little bit, talking about what would be the strategy to protect ourselves against the infection, and we'll come again to that a little bit later. But maybe before that, just to make sure that we're all clear with what AIDS and HIV are or are not, could you please tell us a little bit about what are the biggest myths surrounding HIV and AIDS? Like, what are the fake ideas that we may have regarding the infection?
Yeah, so there are many myths around HIV and AIDS, but I will be touching on some of the most common ones we hear. The first one is actually that the fact that HIV is a very almost like an infectious disease where you could get it by shaking hands, by kissing, by hugging, eating together, sharing a toilet, insect bites. This is actually one of the biggest myths surrounding HIV and AIDS, and that puts a lot of the domestic workers in Hong Kong at a very tough situation, especially if they are contracted positive with HIV, because then their employers feel like they cannot reside with them because typical day-to-day behaviors like eating together, using the same toilet, perhaps shaking hands, would lead them to get HIV as well. And we've seen that at AIDS Concern as well, employers freaking out because they're like, oh, we're going to get HIV because the domestic worker has it, so we're going to terminate the contract. So this happens quite very often, and considering how educated the Hong Kong society is, it's still such a big myth over here. But if you look at it from a factual perspective, HIV is actually only transmitted by 4 bodily fluids, and these 4 bodily fluids, they include your blood, your semen, breast milk, and vaginal fluid, right? And there's a second kind of prerequisite for this transmission to occur, which is that there must be a direct contact between these bodily fluids, so the 4 fluids I've just mentioned, and some sort of open wound or mucous membrane. Open wound could be any wound that is bleeding very heavily, and mucous membranes are basically membranes that are 1 cell thick. Usually they're found at the tip of the penis or like the inner wall of the vagina. So if you are having direct contact between those fluids and one of those mucous membrane or open wound, then there is a high risk of HIV transmission. And when does that occur is usually during unprotected sex. So there's a lot of direct contact between the tip of the penis and the bodily fluids, sharing needles. So if you share needles, perhaps if you're doing drugs, if with your partner or with your friends, if you're sharing needles that may be contaminated, that could put you at risk. Sometimes blood transfusions are contaminated as well, and also breastfeeding and childbirth. That's actually one of the another way of HIV transmission. Another myth that we see is that people believe that HIV is the end of the world, and they believe that everyone infected with HIV or AIDS patient will die. However, HIV is not the end of the world because we do have medication, and it's a very effective medication called antiretroviral therapy, basically ART. And what the science behind this is that if you stick to the medication and you eat your pills regularly, it's usually 1 to 3 pills every single day, your life expectancy, even your social life, your working life, everything is no different from an average person. So it's it's not fair to think that being contracted with HIV is actually the end of the world, because it's not. Um, the third myth I want to touch on is that people that live with HIV, some people believe that people living with HIV, they can never engage in sexual intercourse without without using condom anymore in their life. So they basically would have to engage in sexual intercourse only by using condoms. That is not very true, because there is a recently found concept called U equals U, which is basically undetectable equals untransmittable. And what this means is that if a person who is living with HIV but has been sticking to their medication protocol for at least 6 months, they can reach an undetectable viral load where their virus level or viral load becomes very, very minimal, almost basically undetectable if you go to the doctors. They can actually have sexual intercourse with their partner without using a condom and without having that risk of transmission to their partner. But it's the condition that they should be eating their medication regularly. If they're not, then they won't be able to reach this U equals U. But I want to preface this by saying that U equals U does not apply to other STI. There's loads of other sexually transmitted infections. So if you want to protect yourself against those, you should be using condoms. It is just that with HIV specifically, if they are sticking to the medication and they are going to see the doctors, they achieve this undetectable viral load, then they can start to engage in sexual intercourse with their partner if they would like to without using a condom, if they would like. And the last myth I want to touch on is the symptoms. So, a lot of the people believe that HIV symptoms are just like UTI or other sort of vaginal infections, that they may result in some abnormal discharges around the genital area. However, that is not true. If we look at the early stage symptoms of HIV, they're actually flu like, which are basically fever, weight loss, fatigue, rashes, throat inflammation. So these are very much like symptoms that are of a flu, easily ignored and easily thought of as of another condition. And I want to emphasize that a lot of the times, a lot of people don't show any symptoms at all. So some people could go on about their days and lives without showing any symptoms. And most people, they enter the incubation period after 4 weeks of getting infected. And after 4 weeks of being infected with HIV, you could be having no symptoms at all. You should be having no symptoms at all. So, in AIDS concern, we see some migrant domestic workers come in, get tested, and then they get tested after a year or 6 or 8 months, and then they have absolutely no idea that they're positive with HIV, because they let us know that, oh, they were fine, their body is was working fine, they were walking around feeling perfectly fine, but they were positive with HIV. So it just goes to show that a lot of the times people show no symptoms at all, and that is, yeah, that is, it's, yeah, that is quite
Thank you,
scary.
Maria. Yeah, that's scary. And at the same time, like what like the first reaction I had listening to you is it, all of this shows how key information is in terms of not only protecting yourself, but lifting up some of the stigma around it. And also, as you just said, also in terms of prevention, right? Knowing that, no symptoms doesn't equal no infection. So I think really, even I think to me, like the cornerstone of it is really daring informing ourselves, even of something that can be scary, because the earlier the better, and it is also a way to protect others around us. So again, I'm very grateful we're having this episode and this partnership more generally, especially in this context that you described at the very beginning, where we've seen an increase in the number of cases. So I'll never say it enough. Information is key. So this is also everyone's responsibility to go and look for it, but also to be sharing it within the community and with your peers. Thank you for that, Maria. So now coming to very practical aspects of the topic, could you help us understand how we can protect ourselves against this infection efficiently?
Yes, definitely. So, one of the best ways to protect ourselves against this infection, and actually almost all of the other sexually transmitted infections, is actually to use condoms. Condoms are, they could be male condoms or female condoms. Now, that's up to you which one you want to use, but they are a physical barrier. And if we look at what I mentioned earlier on the route of transmission, I mentioned that there must be a direct contact between the bodily fluids and the mucous membranes. So, condom as a physical barrier prevents that direct contact. So if you do practice safe sex and you use condoms whenever you engage in sexual intercourse, particularly if you are engaging in sexual intercourse with commercial sexual partners or casual sexual partners, it is a very effective method to protect yourself against HIV and also other STI. But there are certain things that are important to keep in mind when you are using condoms. So the first thing is that a lot of the times we see people completely neglect to check the expiry date of the condom. Sometimes we do see that condoms are expired. So it's actually just written right on the package. It's very visible. So it's very important that you check the expiration date before you use the condom, because if it's past the expiration date, it may not be effective. And another thing is more so on the practical side of things. So how to use a condom. Um, we see that a lot of the times participants on our workshops, they often forget that you have to hold the condom from the tip before you put it on the penis if you're using a male condom. So in if you're you have to hold the condom to squeeze out the air and allow room for the semen when the man ejaculates. Otherwise, there is a risk of the condom breaking. So this is another one of the things that we see when that the participants tend to miss when in terms of condom use. And another thing that I want to emphasize is that they condoms must be used from the start till the end. So this is often because pre-cum or pre-ejaculation also contains HIV, also contains virus, so it has the potential to infect someone with HIV. So it is important that right from the get-go, you do start using condom. And it's also important not to use two condoms. Don't believe that if you use two condoms or pack it on one another, it's going to be more effective. No, that could cause friction. That could cause breaking of the condom. So just use one condom at a time. And if you're switching from, let's say, oral intercourse to sexual intercourse, vaginal intercourse, then use another condom. Toss the previous one away, right? And another thing that could protect us against this infection is to get tested regularly. So if you are, as I mentioned before, a lot of the times people show no symptoms at all. So the only way for them to find out is to actually by getting tested. So if they get tested regularly, they are able to find out their HIV status, whether they're positive or negative, and then they can communicate this with their partners, with their families, and then see how they want to move forward from there. And at AIDS Concern, we recommend people that have multiple sexual partners to test more regularly. So if you have, let's say, more than 5 or 6 sexual partners, we would recommend you to come every 3 months to get tested. Um, and you can migrant domestic workers can receive free syphilis and free HIV testing at our center, because we provide center testing every Sunday, and we release the schedule at the beginning of the month. And migrant domestic workers that are interested, they can book an appointment with us through contacting our WhatsApp number, which is 52268547. And through this number, they can just let us know, and we will help them book an appointment for whatever Sunday that they're available on. But if they are only available on weekdays or Saturdays, we can also arrange them a special appointment to come in and get checked as well. Or if somebody is not comfortable coming to our center because they're shy or they're just too busy, they can also order self-test kits. So they would be testing by themselves at home, and we would mail out these test kits to their addresses um, as they've written on the link that you've just shown. And both of these services, they're completely free of charge. And with the center testing, it's completely confidential. We don't require anyone to provide their personal information, their Hong Kong ID. We only require them to give their phone numbers and their date of birth. Other than that, we don't ask for anything else. But if they're still not willing to come, then the self-test kit is another option. However, we do recommend somebody who's testing for the first time to come to our center first, just to get an idea of how the testing works, so that they're able to follow it correctly when they do it themselves. But that is kind of another option highly effective option to protect migrant domestic workers against this infection. And one of the last things that is that I would recommend people to do is to try to avoid alcohol or drugs before engaging in any sort of sexual intercourse, mostly because alcohol or drugs, they affect your judgment, they affect your ability to make good decisions, and they also increase your risk of high risk sexual behavior because you're not able to make these decisions properly. Not to mention, you may not even use a condom properly when you're engaging in alcohol use or drug use. So it's often recommended that before you engage in sexual intercourse, that you try to avoid engaging in these substances.
Thank you, Maria. It is extremely informative, and I think it's really good to be reminded that sometimes, to a big problem, or something that could become a big problem, you have extremely easy and practical, quick solutions that you can actually apply. And from the checks that you need to do when you're using condom, to the practice during the intercourse, to the importance of communication around the topic. The one thing I'd like to add, but it really goes along with what you said, and I'm very glad that you're offering all these different options, so people who want to get tested can actually do it, being mindful of how sensitive the situation sometimes can be. Also, do not hesitate to be asking for help within your community. I think one of the video that we've been disseminated earlier this month, was really about, how peer support can help. And, if you feel you would feel more comfortable going with someone to the center, this is definitely something that is possible and would be very welcomed. Um, so again, as for many different topics that we've covered so far, tap into your network, ask for help, and go and seek information. That would be one of my conclusion word. But like I would really, so we have like more people connecting. So I'm very sorry we had a little bit of a technical issue at the very beginning. But the good news is that obviously the episode is recorded and we'll be disseminating it to the community. And as I was saying, information needs to be taken and maybe listened again and again. I know that there are tonight some of the women watching us were attending the workshop too. We have Ellen. She's saying hi. It's nice to see you and listen to your information. Talking about HIV again, Maria. So again, once is good, twice is better. Just make sure that you're up to date with the information that can actually protect you and your friends and your family. That's very important. I'm just gonna screen it and read it out loud. I have another comment from Jediona Makata saying, hello, good evening, Uplifters community. Remember Lorna here, we attended last time the HIV workshop. So, yeah, you ladies, you do have some understanding of, what the infection is about and how to protect yourself. So I would love to see you taking the responsibility to share the knowledge, being peer leaders, who you are, with your friends, because this is also super helpful in terms of fighting against the spread of the infection.
Yeah, I actually just want to add, when you
Please.
mentioned peer support, Mesh actually does regular, I would say yearly, bi-yearly, yearly actually, peer educator training programs. So what we do over there is we train peers from the community. We try to have an even number of Indonesian and Filipino migrant domestic workers. We recruit them, and then we hold training days for them, a couple of days, and then train them on HIV and AIDS and sexual health and all these different topics. And then they also go for outreach. So on Sundays, they would go for outreach to Central, where there are more migrant domestic workers, and they spread this message to the community as well. So we will be holding another peer educator training very soon. It will be all updated on our Facebook and our social media, but we would love to have active peers and people of the community who are wanting to contribute to the society and spread this message, be a part of this peer educator training program. We've had wonderful ladies in the past, and we continue to they continue to help us in our outreach and spreading the message even in their own social media platforms. So yeah, peer support is very effective.
Yeah, thank you. And we will definitely be sharing the opportunity about this educators training thing that you shared, Maria, to the community. So you feel free to reach out to us or to Match program directly if you want to register. I'm also just gonna screen again the Facebook page because it's really full of information. All right. Well, I'm mindful of the time. I'd like to ask you, Maria, if you have any last piece of advice that you'd like to share with the community, or like maybe your key, the highlights that you'd like them to take away with them.
I think one of the things I want to share with everyone is to remember that HIV is a health status. It's not a punishment. So a lot of the times, people believe that HIV is a punishment to someone, and they stigmatize this infection very heavily. But we should remember that just like any other chronic illness, like diabetes, cholesterol, high blood pressure, it's also a chronic illness where a person has to take medication to treat it, but it's not a punishment at all. So that is something that I would like to emphasize to the community.
Thank you, Maria. Thanks. I think it is well noted, and I know the community is extremely supportive of its members. So I'm sure the message came across. So we're gonna slowly come to the end of the episode. There is one thing that we usually do together in the very end is sharing a very good habit. We call it an evening ritual in the community, and some of our peer leaders are sometimes doing it live because it actually feels good to just go to bed having in mind what we are happy about, what may have happened in the day before, in the week before. So I'd like to ask you, Maria, actually, can you share with us the three things, or maybe it's two, maybe it's four, that made you happy today or in the past couple of days?
So this is something that makes me happy every single day, which is my morning coffee. I it makes it I think I have to say that I wake up to drink coffee, you know? Like
I
I
can
don't drink
understand.
coffee to wake up. I wake up to drink coffee. So morning coffee. I also attended a workout class with my friend today, so that was very fun, and it was a good experience for me to have a workout with my friend and attend a workout class. And lastly, my cat, she's always a reason for me to smile because she always greets me very nicely when I enter the house. So these are the three things that made me very content and happy today.
Well, thanks for sharing. I love the coffee and the cat thing. I am exactly the same. I love drinking my coffee, looking at my cat sleeping. And sometimes it makes my day.
Oh.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I can understand how these, small, simple things can bring happiness. That's for sure. For me, I think I'm very, very happy with the discussion we just had. I'm just gonna read another comment, Ellen Mae again, because actually it really shows the impact that fostering conversation about this topic brings. And so Ellen Mae, she's saying, as a leader. So Elma is now one of Uplifter's mentors. She was really shocked when I agreed to have the free testing last time. So again, acknowledging is not necessarily something pleasant to go through. Um, as I know, I have no experience for a long time. And Asna smiling at me as well. So Asna is our program manager, but I never regret doing it. So as I know, before asking fellow migrants to attend to do the test, I need to experience it myself and encourage them to have tests too, to make sure they are healthy and safe. Thank you. Thanks a lot for that. Um, Marianne is sharing with us. I remember the late Princess Diana of England opened up a lot of eyes when she came in touch with people with HIV. She destigmatized the belief that you could get HIV by just hugging and meeting people who have them. Yeah, that's very true. And that's very, wonderful that you have using their fame and celebrity to actually raise awareness on this. I completely agree with you, Maria. Thank you for this sharing too. So yeah, back to my joy. So really, thank you for this discussion. I think one thing that makes me very happy today is also a small thing, but I called for help one of my teammates when I discovered that we had a little bit of a technical issue at the very beginning, and she just came and fixed the issue, and it feels super good to to be able to rely on your team members, including when it's late at night. So thank you, Haley. I don't know if she's listening to us, but very grateful for that. So thank you again for joining us, Maria. Thanks for the partnership in itself. I feel we have covered a lot of questions. Your insights, your advice are extremely useful. I really hope, and I mean, it's not a hope because I'm seeing it happening already, that some of our peer leaders will just, keep delivering the same messages that you deliver today. And I hope this will have a ripple effect, a positive ripple effect on the community. Thank you, everybody, for joining us and take care. And we'll obviously broadcast the episode on social media. Bye bye. Nice sleep.
Thank you,
Bye.
everyone.
Thank you, Maria.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're
It's been so
welcome. Have a
lovely.
good
It's been so lovely speaking with you, everyone, today.
night. Bye. I'm ending it now.
Okay.